Rock and Stone today, miners. It's a little bit early or a little bit late for this video, but I wanted to cover a video on each of the classes' gear. So I made a separate video entirely about the grenades for Deep Rock Galactic. So for this video, we are going to be covering the gear that each of the dwarves carries with them. This includes the pickaxe, armor rig, and your two secondary tools that every character has access to. So I want to start with, the first thing I want to cover is going to be the pickaxe. The pickaxe is probably the easiest tool. It's one of your most basic damage-based abilities. Alright, by default, it does 25 damage per hit and deals 150% armor break, which is pretty good for breaking through most armor. When you hit level 4, you will gain access to the power attack. This is the only thing you can equip. Essentially, while you're holding L2 to swing your pickaxe, you press R2 for a big two-handed swing. This has a cooldown of 30 seconds. It has a 50% stun chance, lasts for 1.5 seconds, and a radius of 1 meter in a cone in front of you. And I think that's important to understand. It's a small cone in front of you. Not the same cone that the minigun, some like minigun overclocks and stuff like that use, but it's important to understand how this cone works, because it lets you deal some damage. It does 120 damage, which is pretty powerful. Now, the reason why I mention this is that this can be a decent tool, because of that cone hit in front of you. You can use it for breaking through mining faster. For certain characters, this is more impactful. For example, on the driller, one of my go-to things is I will drill up to the overheat, and while I'm waiting for it to cool down, I will use my power attack and then begin picking, switch back to the drills after a couple seconds, go back to drill, and just kind of alternate back and forth on that. Now, at level 8, you get access to one of two options for all of your dwarves. I say two options because it's really only two options. So your three choices are between Serrated Edge, which doubles the amount of damage that your power attack will do. This takes it from 120 to 240, and this is incredible. The reason why I mention this is this enables you to deal a very large chunk of damage to enemies. On Has 1 and 2, this is enough to kill regular grunts and stuff like that outright. This is the one that I run, by the way, just to re-equip them, put that back on. The main reason is it's more damage. The other perk choice you have as well is Better Balance Weight. And yes, I say Better Balance Weight because, you know, BBW versus BWB. The way this works is this shaves 10 seconds off of your power attack cooldown. In my opinion, this one is better if you are using your power attack strictly for like mining, maybe Ebenut missions, where you might be on a timer and you're trying to just quickly get through. Not really going to go into the details. The other choice that you have is to increase your power attack's effect radius so you can hit a larger area in front of you. I don't really find that necessary. It's kind of a point-blank option anyways. That's kind of how I use it. So this one, I would never run this one. This puts you down to 20 seconds. This means you can get 3 power attacks off a minute. I personally don't find myself using the power attack like that. I generally use it in a few localized situations, which is the main reason why I don't run it. That extra damage is so nice. 240 damage. To put that into perspective, 240 damage is the equivalent, essentially, it's a little bit less than 2 sticky grenades on a target. In my opinion, that is the main reason why I would run it. So for that's going to be the same for every character. The only exception I might say is on a driller, you could maybe go for the recharge speed, like I said. You could go for the recharge there, as opposed to to help you with the drilling. And maybe on the scout you could do it as well, because you'll be using it more for mining. I would not recommend that. Talking about the armor rigs, if you did not know as well, every 3 upgrades that you purchase on your mastery tree will give you a bonus 5 health to your suit. So the main reason why I want to mention this is because of the fact that you get that bonus 15 health just by unlocking all of these upgrades. So I do recommend, even though you're not going to use most of these, you're really only going to use a handful of these, that you do that anyways. So the mandatory one, every class has one in their level 3 tree, which I'm going to put this back on. For the gunner, it makes it so that he has 50% explosion resistance. This is helpful for Crassius detonators, bulk detonators, any type of a glyphid exploder. For the actual explosion damage on it, this is particularly good for him. For the scout, they get bonus to fall damage, so it's they cut their fall damage by a third. It's not going to save you from dying from certain types of falls, but it is going to make most falls survivable for you, depending on the hazard difficulty you're on, depending on where you're falling from, etc. The driller gets access to the flame reduction. This is particularly good for magma core. This is particularly good for certain types of enemies, anything that has fire-based attack, like dreadnoughts and stuff like that. They're actually, makes drillers one of the better characters for fighting dreadnoughts as well. 50% fire resistance is pretty good. And last up is the engineer, and the engineer has the poison resistance. He gets 50% reduced damage taken from poison. This actually makes him good in fungus bogs, certain types of poison flora, very good against Praetorians. Anything that deals poison damage takes 50% less from. So that is unique at tier 3 to every character, which is why we're covering it now. Every character does not have a choice on that. I definitely recommend you run it. For your other options, all of the dwarves have the exact same choices for their armor rigs, so we're going to use the gunner as our stand-in. For your first tier of upgrades, you have access to 3 separate mods. So the thing to cover is that you have a 25 health shield with it takes a 7 second delay, where you basically, once it stops taking damage, you stop taking damage, you have to wait 7 seconds before the shield begins recharging. The main thing to note is that's going to affect these two. So the improved generator makes it so that your shield regenerates 1 second sooner. I really don't find a big difference in running this. It's not that noticeable to me. If it was at, say, 5 seconds, where they added an extra second to this mod, I would run this more. This one I definitely do not recommend running at all. So essentially the way this works is it adds an extra 2 seconds to your time, but your shield will regenerate double speed. This is very good for certain types of situations. I think the only character that could get away with running this is the gunner because of his shield generator, which I will talk about in a few minutes. But personally, I do not recommend running this mod. This mod is very bad. You want your shield to regenerate faster. It does regenerate pretty quickly. I just don't necessarily think you need to run it. What I normally end up running is this one, which is just you can carry 5 extra minerals before needing to deposit. I don't really feel the impacts on this. If you are playing on like Has 5, a lot of Has 4, a lot of Has 5, and like you want that shield back, go ahead and run this. The main reason, I just like that extra 5. So if you did not know, most veins of gold and most veins of nitra have exactly 45 nitra or gold to them. It's usually in the 40 to 45 range, depending on how well you're picking it. So that's the main reason why I like running this. Essentially, this means that you can, by running this, you can get a full vein of mineral, whether it's nitra or gold, sometimes morkite or distrum, before needing to deposit it. This is definitely more helpful on point extractions and oil refining missions. So for your tier 2 mod, you have the choice between Overcharger and Healthy. This is a very straightforward choice. You can either have an extra 5 health to your shield, or you can have an extra 20 health to your base kit. This is a no-brainer of the 20 bonus health. This stacks on top of the bonus 15 health you get from this. I highly recommend that you run this because your health is what keeps you from dying. Extra health is always good. This also does stack with Red Rock Blaster, which is the special beer, costs 1 barley bulb, gives you 30% more health. It is based off of what your max health is. So if you have 125 health like here, that bonus 30% is based off of that. You're going to get less health off of that than if you were running this. The extra 5 shield is kind of helpful. It means your shield is going to break a little bit less. If you are somebody who likes running a massive shield build, like if you're running Shield Link, and then you want to run like Improved Generator and Overcharger, this can be a good, suitable option for you. I just find that the shield breaks very quickly, and I would prefer to have a little bit extra health to tank more hits rather than having my shield tank a couple more hits. For your last option at tier 4, you have 3 choices. You have damage, stun, and revive. So the actual numbers are not listed as to what happens here. The shockwave means that when your shield breaks violently, it damages all enemies around you in the process. This is a very close range. This is a 1 meter range. It is the same range as your power attack pickaxe. And that applies, that's the range for both of these abilities. This is 1 meter for the shockwave. The damage numbers I'm not really sure on. Now, I run this one because any extra damage is helpful, and my shield breaks a lot. If your shield is breaking more from fall damage, I don't necessarily recommend this, but it is nice in combat because there is a 30-second cooldown as to the amount of times this can apply. So you can't, have your shield break, get out of combat for 7 seconds, and then, it applies again, basically every 7 seconds that you put shield back on. It can't work like that. But generally, if your shield breaks, you have to wait about 5 seconds. Usually you're going to take damage for another, 3 to 4 seconds, right? Then your shield's going to recharge. It's about 10 seconds right there. If it takes, another 10 seconds for you to break your shield, it's not going to apply. The longer you can stay alive, the more uses you get out of this. It's just helpful damage. The stun can be helpful if you do need some breathing room. The main reason why I don't run this is because it doesn't damage enemies. It's only a 50% chance to stun nearby enemies. It has the same range. It has a 1.5 second duration. I'm not a particularly great fan on this. Your power attack pickaxe does the same thing on a 30-second cooldown that you can control. So I think that's a little bit better, and it does damage. I would not recommend this. This one and this one are the two I really wouldn't recommend. Your last one that you could consider is Breathing Room. Breathing Room makes it so that it gives you a bonus 3 seconds of invulnerability every time you get revived. Now, I don't run this for one reason. When you get revived, your shield is full health when you are at the revival process. The main reason why I'm not a fan of this is if your shield is breaking in 3 seconds, you are taking too much damage, you are in a very bad spot, you're going to go down anyways. The extra 3 seconds is nice, it does allow you time to reposition. The downside is it does not protect your shield health. It only protects you. So if you are trying to use that extra 5 to 6 seconds of revive invulnerability to do a lot of to try and get as much damage out as possible before you go down again, this is not going to help you. In my opinion, I think Shockwave is better for the extra burst of damage. I just want to mention as well, this is not a good thing to run with Iron Will, because Iron Will makes you completely damage immune for the duration. That will be for a perk video when I get the perks maxed out though. So that covers what I would personally run for this. Like I said, this is kind of a personal choice between Bigger Mineral Bag and Improved Generator. And again, personal choice between Shockwave and Breathing Room. So now for each character's class specific gear, this part of the video is going to be a little bit longer. Essentially, I'm just going to cover them in order. So down on the D-pad is going to be your shield generator for the gunner. Essentially, the way this mod works is you throw down a shield onto the ground. It's a little bubble shield. Enemies that are physically inside the shield when you throw it will retreat out of it. Enemies that are outside of the shield after it's thrown will not enter it. And it covers a nice little dome bubble here. For the modifications as to what your choices are, at tier 1 you have a bonus 1% to your recharge speed. So you can carry up to 4 of these at a time. Now when you throw one down, it lasts a certain amount of time. When it expires, it has to recharge. So even though you have 3 more, you cannot use them until the recharge time goes off. You ideally do not need to be using like 3 of them back to back to back. I don't run that. I instead run the protect a larger area. This increases the area that it protects by a little bit. it's not a big thing, but like I said, that extra second's really not that impactful. So a little bit of a larger area, a larger safe zone is always nice. At tier 2, you have the same recharge faster speed, although this one is 2 seconds as opposed to 1 second. So if you want to run a super recharge build, you can do this, where you can have it within 10 seconds. You shouldn't need that, though. I run the shield lasts longer one. This is always helpful, and for your tier 3 one, I'm going to be picking this as well. So essentially, this makes it so that your shield lasts longer. Now, the thing I want to mention is that every second that the shield is up, your personal shield that you have equipped regenerates 10 shield per second. So after about 2-3 seconds, your shield is full health, which I'll talk about in a minute. For tier 3, you have another shield duration range upgrade and another duration upgrade. But you also have this choice where the shield's protective properties linger for a few seconds after you leave the shield. Essentially what this means is that enemies will not approach you as if you are in the shield. It lasts for 1.5 seconds after you leave. Not a big fan of this one. I find it very inconsistent to get value out of. The only thing I see it's really helpful is that if you're in the middle of the shield when it drops, enemies will approach you. In the time it takes for them to approach you, your 1.5 seconds runs out. So that's the main thing. If you're like right on the edge of the bubble and it runs out, you'll see them back up just a little bit. It's not a very noticeable difference. I would not recommend it. The main thing I run for is the duration. So this gives a 9-second duration. This enables you to do one of two things. You can throw your shield generator down on a teammate to get a revive on them, get them revived safely. It takes 4 or 5 seconds to revive, so you'll have 4 to 5 seconds of safety as well. You can throw this on a supply pod or an area you want to force enemies away from in order to give you some time to, like, for example, repair Doretta, repair a fuel pod, or get a supply drop safely. The downside to this is that you're basically using one shield generator to get a supply drop that's going to give you back 2. So you may want to like wait and use one of these shields before you throw one on the supply spot, so you do get both of them back. The main reason I do like this, I do like the 9-second duration on it. And the reason why I mention that is because remember that your shield's going to regen per second. So something you can do is to create a safe zone on the map. This is your third option that I would do as a gunner, is to just throw it out, create a safe zone on the map where you run out of the bubble with a full shield, kill some enemies, your shield breaks, immediately run back into the bubble, and your shield regenerates very quickly. If you do this like 1 or 2 times, pretty good strategy to keeping yourself alive, especially if you're low on health rather than just trying to stay and take it. One thing I do want to mention though on this that I think is very important to understand: it does not protect you from area of effective abilities that are already happening. So for example, it's not going to protect you from anything falling from the ceiling, like stalagmites or environmental things. It's not going to prevent explosion damage, fire damage, poison damage, death farts from Praetorians. Not going to protect you against that. Exploders, not going to protect you from the damage on their explosion. Crassius detonators, it will protect you from the explosion, from the damage, as long as it doesn't penetrate the bubble. Some things will penetrate the bubble. Explosions, like from a bulk detonator, will not, but you will still be hit by knockback effects as well. If you get knocked out too, that removes your invulnerability. So next up, for your mobility, you have the zipline launcher. Essentially the way this works is you aim it at an object that you can launch it to, and it creates a zipline that you and your team can travel up and down at will. You can grab this while you're falling to remove fall damage. There's a lot of useful options here. So for the 3 tiers for the mod, your first tier gives you an extra ammo. This is helpful. So the way this works is you get 4 zip lines by default. I think this is actually kind of glitched because I run this one right here and I get 4 zip lines. I have 4, not 3, 4. So I think that it's actually 4, and this one gives you a 5th one. You can run this if you want an extra zip line. Generally, I would just call a supply drop if you run out. I will find myself, usually what will happen is if I don't have a supply drop ready, or if I'm not planning on calling a supply drop, I usually save my last zip line for when I'm trying to make an escape as a gunner in case I do need it in order to escape. What you should run is the operational angle. So if you didn't notice, you have 32-degree angle. That is how high up of an angle you can aim that the zipline can be launched. This increases that to 38, and that significantly increases the angle at which you can use the zipline. You can't use it for like straight vertical, straight horizontal. You can use it for straight horizontal, but I wouldn't recommend that. It has to have a little bit of an angle to it. This is very important. The other reason why I don't run the extra distance is you do, for your tier 2, you have a mandatory distance upgrade as well. So I highly recommend that you avoid this one, unless you want a super long reach for the maximum chasms. Very rarely do I find myself having to be out of range. I had one mission today in Glacial Strata where I was trying to aim like all the way across the map in a salvage room cavern, all the way across the map, and I couldn't hit it. I literally just parkoured a little bit closer, about maybe 10 to 20 meters. I got that zip line all the way across, and that's a much easier strategy. You could also try going down. You might need to use 2 zip lines if that's the case. I highly recommend the angle one though. So then obviously this is your only choice right here. You're going to take this. This is nice to give you some extra cross distance. For your last one, you have 2 choices. One is increased speed and acceleration on zip lines. Basically, this means that you move on the zip line faster. Not really a big deal. The bonus movement speed going up a zip line is nice because it's slow. Going down a zip line, you just hold down and you'll zip down much faster. I personally run the fall damage if you fall off a zip line. I have a habit of pressing X by accident. So, because I'm used to like jumping around a lot in this game and moving around, this is quite common. Also, if you accidentally press triangle and reverse your direction, and then, like kind of panic, and instead of pressing triangle again, you press X to jump off. Or another important thing as well is if you press X and jump off the zip line, like at the edge of a cliff, you don't catch the cliff and you fall, that will still count towards your reduced fall damage. So what this does is it gives you 33% fall damage reduction. It is not a lot for other classes except for the Scout. For the Scout, it's great because it means that you are reducing your fall damage by 66% in this instance. The Scout's really not going to be using zip lines all that often unless it's like too far for your grappling hook, or they're having to carry something heavy. But definitely recommend this. This is a good team mobility tool. The zipline launcher, in my opinion, is very good for any mission that involves you carrying heavy items. Drill dozer missions with oil canisters, point extractions with a Quarus. To a certain extent, it can be helpful on dreadnought missions and just general team mobility. I think it's a pretty good mod. Next up, we have the Scout. First up, you have the flare gun. For the flare gun modifications, basically the way this works is you shoot this flare into a wall or a ceiling or the ground, and it creates a lot of light in the room, kind of help illuminate the room, so you're not using your flares as often. By default, they last for 75 seconds. It's really helpful for helping your team not burn through flares as much. For your first modification, you have extra ammo. So bonus 3 carrying ammo, so basically an extra magazine, or you have a longer burn. This will add an extra 15 seconds, so it'll be a minute and a half duration, which is the equivalent of 3 flares. For this tier right here, I would highly recommend that you run either or on these. It really doesn't matter because I generally run the other option down here. If you want to run a super ammo build with 18 flares, you can take both of these. If you want to run a super duration build where you run 105 seconds, you can run it here. I personally am not a fan of this. If it boosted it by another 30 in total, so if it was a 2-minute flare, I could maybe consider this, but as it stands right now, I'm kind of happy with just running the expanded ammo bag. Your other tier 3 option, by the way, is just an auto reload. So if you fire it in a ceiling and then switch to a different tool, and then a few seconds later, you go back to switch, the gun's automatically reloaded. It's kind of handy, but I would not recommend, giving up one of these slots for it. Your tier 2 upgrade is a rate of fire increase. You really only need 1 flare in a room. You don't need more than one. unless it's a really big room, in which case you'll need 2 flares. You do not need a rate of fire of 4 flares per second. That's the main reason I run the high capacity mags. It gives you 4 flares before you have to reload. It may throw off your max ammo a little bit because you have 4 flares, but you have 15 total ammo. That's not really an issue, in my opinion. Like I said before, this is a matter of personal choice, in my opinion. If you do want the extra ammo, you know, you can run a 18 instead of, 15 or 12. If you want the extra duration, you can run that. Personally, I think you should split these 2 right here, and then just the capacity mags is what I would recommend. What makes the Scout so quick is their grappling hook. This enables them to zip around the map and grab objectives very quickly. They can do minerals pretty well. So, looking at your choices, essentially the way this works is it has a range limit on it. When you hit the maximum range limit, you can't go any further. It has a 4-second cooldown, you move pretty quick, and you will take fall damage. If you fall from a far enough height. Your suit will not protect you. So we're going to start at the bottom. You have 3 options here at the bottom tier, and I highly recommend temporary fall damage bonus after releasing the grappling gun. The way this works is for the next 3 seconds, you will gain a bonus 33% fall damage reduction. Now, here's what's important on this. So your Scout's grappling hook provides you the 33%, your suit provides you with 33%, and if you get Tunnel Rat Beer that provides you with 33%, you basically you will not take fall damage at all if you run that build. So this can be very helpful. If you are a Scout player, I would recommend buying Tunnel Rat for your team. Anytime you see it, if you are the Scout player, just so you literally have no fall damage. I have never died from fall damage as a Scout player once I had this equipped, plus my suit bonus modification. I'm telling you, and Tunnel Rat. Never die from fall damage. Even then, it's very rare I die from fall damage in most cases. Your other options that you have available, so you do have a bonus movement speed when you release the gun. Essentially what this means is you get a bonus, I forget if it's 10 or 20% movement speed bonus for 3 seconds after you release the gun. This is nice for a moving faster build where you're trying to zip through. Personally though, your grapple gun will take you farther than you can actually run. I would actually recommend cooldown instead. This shaves 1 second off of your cooldown, so the grappling gun can recharge at 3 seconds instead of 4. And that can mean all the difference in the world in longer falls. So this is what I would run as a second option, but this is really your best option. For the Tier 2 mod, you have to have a mandatory range increase. Tier 1 is your choice. I personally prefer the extended range myself, 30 meters. It covers the same range as a default zipline from the gunner. So if you play gunner and you play their zipline first, and then you say, well, let me give Scout a try, and you have you get up to Tier 2, your grappling hook will have the same reach as a basic gunner zipline. You can just control the angle on it, which is very nice. That's the main reason I run it, is for that range. What this does is this shaves a ½ second off your cooldown. If you do want a max cooldown build, you can run it like this. So you have a 2.5 second cooldown. This ½ second, to me, I don't notice it. So even if I was going to run this, I would still run the extra range item. And last, at Tier 3, what you have is you have 2 options here. Your first one, the high velocity ejection system. Basically, it means that the hook shoots out faster. So you actually hit your target faster and begin traveling faster. The overcharge winch means when you have already stuck your hook in and your hook begins winding, your actual movement speed while you are traveling goes faster. This lets you get to that point a lot faster. I personally prefer this. This is not a noticeable difference when I ran it, so this is the one I would run just for the most benefit. So double range and hook retract speed. If you do want to like control your mobility a little bit more, for example, if you're shooting at a high angle so that you can get up and then you cancel your hook in midair and then try and jump off, this does mean you'll take more fall damage than if you took this one. Personally, it's a risk I'm willing to take if I need to get out of dodge. Alright, so that covers our Scout for the last 2 classes. We're going to go with the Driller. So the Driller's main thing, we're going to start with your power drills first. For your power drills, essentially the way these work is they are a set of motorized drills. When you hold down the button, you will stand in place and your drills will spin. They will overheat, but they won't consume fuel. As you move forward, they will begin drilling through the environment. And every time they drill through an environment is when it consumes fuel. So the way it works is they do 5 damage per second to enemies. They drill at 100% mining rate. Is basically that's your speed as you're moving through. Although you are a little bit slowed when you're using the drills. Has a maximum fuel capacity of 38. It takes 8 seconds if the drill overheats, if you get to 100%, and it'll have a little red indicator saying jammed. It takes 8 seconds to cool down from that before you can use the drills again. So that gets all that out of the way. Now your tier 3 modification is that you will drill faster. Now I'm covering this because that is going to remove the need to get the hardened drill tips at tier 1. It is mandatory at tier 3. There is no reason to run it here. If you run this, you will actually drill faster than you can move unless rich atmosphere is on. So there is no reason to run this unless you are running supercharged motor. Supercharged motor syncs it up so that you move at the same speed when you're drilling as if you are just walking by default. So this is what I recommend. Do not run this. So for tier 1, that gives you 2 choices. Barbed drills, which does 10 damage per second to enemies instead of 5, or expanded fuel tanks. Most people tend to run barbed drills for melee damage. There is a melee damage build if you run barbed drills and bloody cold drills, so that you will actually remove 5% heat per second that you are actively damaging an enemy. So this is a nice damage build if you're running, say, a vampire driller. Most people tend to do that. I tend to use my drills exclusively for moving. I don't use them in combat, therefore I don't run that build. Because I don't use them in combat, I mostly bring driller for on-site refining missions, or in missions where it was very difficult to go down. For me, as a driller main, when I call the drop pod, I'm not gonna bother, like, going back the way I came. I will just drill in a straight line to the drop pod, environment be damned. So for that reason, I do run the extra fuel tanks in both cases. If I run both of these modifications, this brings you up to a maximum fuel capacity of 50. This means that you will not run out of ammo unless you are doing an on-site refining mission. That's the only situation that I ever find myself running out of fuel. Some maps you will need to create staircases for your team in the environment. Dense Biozone is a decent example of this. And in certain maps where it is the terrain is harder to get through, such as Crystalline Caverns or Magma Core or Glacial Strata, the extra fuel is just helpful for helping drill your team through parts of the map you don't want to deal with. So that just leaves your tier 2 modification. You have the choice between a faster overheat duration or faster cooling. Essentially, they do the same thing in a sense. So if your drill overheats, you drill it all the way up to 100. This cuts the time down almost in half. It drops it from an 8-second wait time before you can use it again to a 5-second wait time. This makes it so that your drills, if you go up, let's say, to 99%, your drills will cool 50% faster back down to 0. Personally, I tend to do this. The way I use my drills is I'll drill up to 100, switch over to my pickaxe, I'll use a power attack, and then pick for a few more seconds, switch back to the drills, I'm good to go. I usually cut off at 99 anyways, but in case I do go to 100, this is the main thing I run. The other option that you have for your driller is the Satchel Charge. There are 2 main things that you can use the Satchel Charge on. Number 1 is to use it as a damage option against big enemies that you want to kill quickly. The other option is for mining. It really depends on the situation that you're in. So talking about your tier 2 upgrade, the mandatory upgrade, just lets you disarm and pick up unused charges. So if you drop a charge, go down before you can blow it up, a teammate comes over and revives you, you don't have to, like, run away and hurry. You can just disarm the charge before it goes off. it does have an automatic timer where it will go off if you don't have this modification. Once you put this modification on, it won't go off until you trigger it yourself. So that's covering that. Now, the Tier 3 modification and the Tier 1 modification, there is some debate on. For Tier 4, it's pretty easy. I would run Rock Mower. So the way this works is you have a bonus 10 meters where you will scare enemies away from. Let's put it this way. Anything caught in the blast is going to die, except for maybe an oppressor or a dreadnought. And oppressors and dreadnoughts don't get feared. So this doesn't help against that. Anything else is going to die. Don't run that. Extra stun duration. So this is an extra 10 meters away from the blast where enemies are stunned. Now this is more helpful because things that are outside the range of the blast, you know, that don't die, will get stunned. That's nice. It's a 1.5 second stun. I wouldn't run it. This is the one I run. This helps with mining. So essentially this causes a much bigger crater. This lets you mine through the environment a lot easier. This can be kind of hard to use though. So for example, if you are on a Morkite mission and you are trying to create a pathway, this will actually make it harder because it makes a much deeper crater. The main reason why I run this is because this is very good for increasing your area of effect, believe it or not. So it makes the hole go deeper. It doesn't widen the radius of it that much, but it blows up much deeper the surrounding environment. It can be helpful for helping create bigger bunkers as well. So one way you can use your Satchel Charge is to just drill into a straight wall, put a Satchel Charge, walk out, blow it, and now you have a big, large room you create for your team. For Tier 1 and Tier 3, you do have two choices. I do run the same choice for each. So you have the ability to carry an extra Satchel Charge. This means you can carry up to 4 of these. Personally, I don't find myself using the C4 that much. If you are planning on running a bunker strategy, you may want to do that. I personally run bonus damage, so it has 375 damage. Now, that's not a lot of damage. That being said, if I put the 2 damage upgrades on, I'm now dealing 875 damage. That means I'm dealing almost 3 times the amount of damage. I will say that the unstable explosive one here means that if somebody shoots your satchel, it's going to blow up. So make sure that your gunner with the minigun knows not to shoot the Satchel Charge out of the air, because that's very bad for your health. I do run both of these because at 875 damage, you will one-shot everything that is not a Dreadnought or an Oppressor. And in that case, with a Dreadnought or an Oppressor, in most cases, the Dreadnought is going to have half of its health taken out. Something I have done before is I use the flamethrower and my pickaxe to reduce a Dreadnought's shield down to nothing, armor down to nothing, drop a Satchel Charge, blow it up, flamethrower, pickaxe, drop it down again, drop a Satchel Charge, dead Dreadnought. Works like a charm. It doesn't work against the Hive Guard, but it is incredibly effective against the other 2 variants in the Twin and the Glyphid Dreadnought. This one right here for the larger blast radius, this is best if you are using it exclusively for mining. So for a decent mining build where you're only using it for mining, I would run this. Very large crater. If you're running bunkers or mining, you don't use it for damage, I would run this. I personally run it for damage for big things I need to kill quickly. The last character we're going to be covering is the Engineer. So the Engineer has 2 tools. They have the platform gun and they have the turret. So covering the platform gun first, the platform gun has 3 modifications. Their first tier of modification and their third tier of modification do have varying options. The second tier just makes it so it reduces fall damage if you land on it. Believe it or not, it reduces fall damage by 75%. It's one of the largest fall damage reduction mods in the game. Note, that affects you. So if you shoot a platform below somebody else, they're going to get 50% reduced fall damage. That is a coding error, I think, more than it actually is a bug or a glitch. I'm hoping the devs are going to change this a little bit. But if you shoot this underneath a gunner, you know, who's like falling through the environment, they will take more damage than you will take from landing on your own projectile. For tier 1 and tier 2, I personally run the extra ammo bags because if I run both of these, it doubles my total ammo capacity. And I find myself using my platforms to create bridges a lot of time. Like, I'll create long bridges or long spiral staircases. I'm also not good with aiming the platform gun, so I like having the extra ammo bags. Now, let's say you don't want to run the extra ammo bags. Well, what can you run? At tier 1, there's no reason not to run this. You have a faster rate of fire, so you can shoot 2 of these per second. I don't find that useful unless you are in a situation where you're high on a platform, a teammate falls off, and you want to save them from fall damage, so you shoot one down, but you miss, so you have to shoot the other one quickly. Very rare situation. The other one is the extended magazine capacity, so I can carry 4 more before I have to reload, or I can carry 8 more in total. I want the 8 more. So at tier 3, you have the repellent additive and the disabled inertia inhibitor. This one, to cover this real quick, this is terrible. Do not run this. Basically, it just means that it shoots very quickly. Not helpful. This is the common one most people run. Essentially, enemies will avoid walking on it whenever possible. Now, if you surround yourself in a circle of platforms, the enemies are going to walk over it, because you've left them no way to get to you. But this can be good for like spraying on ceilings or on walls to force enemies to come on the ground at you, as opposed to from above or from the sides. This is particularly helpful. You can also spray this around an objective, like you can spray this around Doretta to protect Doretta a little bit from attacks if you stand outside of it. It's not going to prevent enemies from doing it in that situation, because Doretta counts as a player in that situation, but it will distract certain enemies, similar to a lure will, where a certain amount of enemies will still go after Doretta instead of all of them. I personally just run the extra ammo bags. I kind of prefer killing enemies and killing them rather than forcing them to come at me from a different angle. The other tool that we need to cover is the turrets. So, essentially, the default turret takes 4 seconds to build. It has a maximum targeting range of 20 meters. You carry 1. It has an ammo capacity of 90. It takes 2 seconds to reload it. And you carry 425 ammo for it. So, what does it do? You place it down, and it spins around in a circle, and if any enemies enter within, any hostile enemies, I should say, enter within 20 meters, it will automatically begin firing at them. Now, this does not account for weak points. If an oppressor enters its range, it will spray bullets directly at its armor covering. Doesn't give a damn. So, it can waste ammo in this situation. Now, what do we have for modifications? There are no mandatory modifications for this one. Therefore, we can cover them in order. At tier 1, you have the choice between the MK2 or the Gemini system. Essentially, this is the main thing that you want to choose between. Do you want 1 turret or 2? If you take 2 turrets, you carry a little bit extra ammo, but you get 2 turrets. So you can place down 2 separate turrets at 2 locations. They'll cover pretty well. This is what I run. Now, you're going to go through ammo more often, but this is essentially giving you an extra way to deal damage. If you are in a very large room, you can set up a turret in one part of the room, set up a turret in another part of the room, and you can sit in the middle. And enemies, at any point in the room, they're going to take damage from something, whether it's a turret, or you. I personally run this. If you do not want the 2 turrets, you can run this. So what this modification does is it gives you an extra 15 ammo in the gun, which I don't find that helpful. It gives an extra 2 damage per shot and an extra 5 targeting range. This is very good. Now, this is the modification I personally would run if you just want a super Hawkeye turret, okay? Which we'll talk about now. At tier 4, you have to choose between one of 2 things. So this modification right here will create a focused angle. It creates a cone in front. It will only kill things that enter that cone. So it has to be aimed correctly. But it does 5 more damage per shot. If you are running a solo turret, I do not recommend this because it's terrible. The only reason I would find this good is if you're in a choke point, you can position this turret to face you while you're aiming at the turret's back. So if anything comes up behind you, the turret will shoot it. Now, this modification right here does give you bonus damage. So if you run the defender system by itself with no other damage mods, it does 11 damage per shot, which is pretty good, and this is the one that I run. But I also run this with 2 turrets. This can let you create a crossfire where the enemies that enter that crossfire take a lot of damage in a short time. If you are running just the 1 turret, then you want to run the Hawkeye system. So what the Hawkeye system does, the Hawkeye system gives you bonus 15 range on your turret, and it makes it so that when you hit an enemy with your laser pointer, like any target you highlight with your laser pointer, your turret will focus and shoot. Again, doesn't work through, like oppressors and shit like that with the full frontal armor, but this can be helpful if you're playing by yourself. You're going to have Bosco to do this, but if you're playing in a team, this essentially gives you the control that you would have with Bosco. This can be good if you run it with this, because now you have more damage per shot, and you have a bonus targeting range of 40, so you essentially double your range. Personally, I prefer the 2 turrets on the defender system. This is very good for creating crossfires and choke points and things of that nature, so this is primarily what I run. For your tier 2 modification, you have 3 options. Your first one is expanded ammo bags. This gives you an extra 90 ammo. If you don't run the Gemini system, then it will put you up to the same amount of ammo that you would have with the Gemini system. If you are running it, it basically gives you an extra magazine for each turret instead of just 1 bonus magazine. I'm not a fan of this. I really don't go through turret ammo that much. The other option is to refill your turret faster. So this instead, it changes how your turret works. So if you run this mod, you refill your turret's ammo in 1 second, as opposed to in 2 seconds. Again, I don't really find this that annoying. What I do find annoying is that it takes 4 seconds to build a turret, and I run 2 turrets, so it's 8 seconds to build my turrets. I run the quick deploy. This cuts the construction time per turret down to 2. This is also very good if you need to relocate turrets in the middle of a fight. Even if you are running the single turret, it can be good, because you're going to be moving your turret around a lot. 2 seconds to build is a lot better than 4 seconds. Even though multiple players can help you, I think as an engineer, where they can't like reposition your turrets for you, if they could, then yeah, sure. At tier 3, you have another option. So first off, you can increase the magazine capacity for your turret up to 30. Again, I don't recommend this. Your turrets don't go through 90 ammo that quickly unless they are shooting something like an oppressor, which again, that should be your priority to kill because it's a dumb turret. Your other 2 options is a matter of personal preference. One is a stun, so each bullet fired has a 20% chance to stun enemies. This means that in a 90 round magazine, you're going to be getting a stun on average every 19 bullets. Or every 18 bullets you should get a stun. I'm personally not a fan of this. I prefer the armor break. The reason is I tend to use the double turret setup for crowd control reasons, so the faster it can shred through armor, the faster it can reach weak points. Now the reason why I do mention this, it pairs very well with certain guns that aren't good on armor break. For example, the Stubby and the Smart Rifle are terrible armor breaks. The Warthog does have an armor break modification, but if you want the extra damage, then you're not giving the armor break. So if you want to run extra damage instead of armor break, then that's a very good mod. Personally, I run it anyways. While you can just, switch to a different secondary weapon to negate that, personally, that is what I would run. So that is my build for each of the gear. That's my gear guide as to what the individual modifications do. The next video I will do is going to be covering probably what dwarves are better for what maps and what game modes. I will cover the perks once I have them maxed out. Same thing, I will cover the guns when I have all of the guns maxed out before I start working on overclocks. So thank you for listening to me ramble on this. Have a good evening.